Okay, so we've had just the most bonkers week whatsoever. We've had the white smoke officially come up after just 2 days, and we've elected the first ever American Pope in 1,200 years, the beginning of time. We've had a crazy NBA playoffs, and then, of course, we also have had, again, as Anthony just decided to ruin it right before, Timothy Chalamet deciding to skip the Met Gala and stay home and watch game one because the Knicks needed him more than the Jenners needed him. So not only is Timothy Chalamet trying to be the Knicks' best fan, guys, he's trying to avoid the Kardashian curse. He understands the impact of it, and he understands his job as an American citizen. Good evening. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz. Let's go.
Wow. Talk about a preamble. I'm Jay Kaplan, and I'm just happy to be here.
I'm Anthony Strait. Happy anniversary, Allen Iverson. On this day 23 years ago, we talked about practice for about 5 minutes and mentioned the word practice about 15 times.
Not a game. Not a
No,
game. Welcome to the On
no.
the Sports Slides. Welcome to the mostly playoff edition of On the Sports Slides. Facebook and YouTube is where you need to subscribe to get this goodness in many different forms. / On the Sports Slides for both. We'll talk about our Twitter handle too at the end of the show. All right. Today, as the Great Eight compete in the conference semifinals of the NBA and NHL, we ask the most important questions. Can the Knicks stay on the defending champs level? You can tell I wrote this 4 days ago. What are the keys? What are the keys or players in the other three series in the NBA? Which NHL players from the Great North and below should we watch out for? And one non-playoff related question: have the New York Rangers found the luck of the Irish with a Sullivan? All that and more to be answered on tonight's show. But first, the end of a legendary coaching career. To some, he's known as coach. To others, he's known as a goat in his profession. And to himself, he is now known as El Jefe. Last week ended the coaching career of Gregg Popovich, coach of the Spurs since the year 1996, when he went from president of basketball operations to coach. And after 5 championships later, in 2025, he went from coach back to president of basketball operations. So let's talk about, as we have thoughts of the man, starting with go to Anthony first. Thoughts of the man who was the longest tenured active coach in all four sports, stepping to a different role, Anthony, in San Antonio.
One thing about Gregg Popovich, and I remember his first season as head coach, that was the season where David Robinson was done for the year, and the Spurs kind of lucked out with the paintball balls and ended up with the number 1 draft pick that turned out to be Tim Duncan. And kind of the rest is history. 2 years later, they were NBA champions, and that Spurs dynasty. And you think about Popovich and the Spurs, uh, and that long run, it was towards the tail end of the Bulls dynasty, and kind of sandwiched in between the Lakers championship run. Then you had the emergence of the Miami Heat and their big three, and even the Warriors dynasty as well. So you're talking about a long list of really good championship teams that the Spurs had to kind of deal with. And when you talk about the mid 2000s, we talk about the Western Conference being pretty much every team that made the playoffs had to win 50 games to even get in. And it's a job that Gregg Popovich did, not just with Tim Duncan and David Robinson, but you looked at, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, some of these other guys that played for the Spurs. And it was just his coaching style. I mean, it was sometimes stern, sometimes unorthodox. Remember letting Tony Parker coach timeout huddle one game. Sometimes it was comical. You all remember him playing hack and Shaq 5 seconds into opening night just to kind of get a laugh out of Shaq. His post game, his in game, his in-game interviews, which could go anywhere from yikes to downright comical to uh, even one of the few. He's one of the few people who will open up, who didn't mind having an in-game interview with the late Chris Sager because the respect level was there. And you think about also the coaching tree that came from Gregg Popovich. How many people played for him? How many people was an assistant coach under him? How many people was in it had some tie to Gregg Popovich's capacity? And you think about he was one of the first people to have a woman assistant coach on his bench, Becky Hammond, who went on to also have her own great college coaching career, to say the least. But you think about 14 head coaches, just to mention off. Kenny Atkinson, J.B. Bickerstaff, Chauncey Billups, Rick Carlisle, Doug Christie, Willie Green, J.J. Redick, Tom Thibodeau. Those they kind of branches off to other assistants or players like Ime Udoka, Steve Kerr, Doc Rivers, Quinn Snyder, Eric Spoelstra, Jamal Mosley was assistant to him for Team USA, and the list go on and on. But I think going Billy Donovan, Jason Kidd as well. But I think the respect that Gregg Popovich commanded when he walked into a room, not just among his peers, but also the players from around the league, from players like LeBron who competed against him, obviously the players that played for him, and this never. It's not often you say that coaches are irreplaceable, but Gregg Popovich is among that list of players of coaches that there's no way you're going to be able to replace what he meant to the sport, to the game of basketball, to the NBA, even being outspoken on politics at times too, and being West Point grad and Army, and just
Air Force.
Air Force, sorry, Air Force grad, and just being and you saw the discipline that he brought to the Spurs when he coached them throughout his career, and now he's moving to the front office. It don't even feel like he's really moving to a new position as much as it's more of a well-earned deserved retirement, even if it's technically not a retirement. But Gregg Popovich, I mean, even going out with the El Jefe T-shirt, in typical Gregg Popovich fashion. I mean, I don't think there's never going to be a coach like him. It's sad to see him go, especially the circumstances surrounding him stepping away from coaching. But it's great to see him, kind of what is going to be part of the next chapter in his life, and just how much he'd be more camera friendly this time. I mean, it's a little different being able to interview Gregg Popovich when he's not in the middle.
Be camera friendly in any way, shape, or form.
When he's not in the middle of a game or yelling at Joe Crawford or whoever is deciding to tee him up at some point. So it's gonna be fun to see Gregg Popovich head coach, and to see if he, like himself just a little bit, or he just be, typical Gregg Popovich that we all know and love.
I don't think he's ever going to be the Knicks. He's never going to have the Nick Saban media makeover going into the media. Jay? No. The players of him have a lot of different thoughts about his entire career and the number of people he has really touched on his way in his almost 3 decades in the league.
Yeah, we know the resume, right? 29 years, 1,422 wins, most in NBA history. 621 winning percentage, 5 NBA titles, one of only 5 coaches to do that. 170 playoff wins, third all-time behind a pair of legends, Phil Jackson and Pat Riley. 22 consecutive winning seasons, longest streak in NBA history. 3-time Coach of the Year, named one of the 15 greatest coaches in NBA history in 2021. Led the U.S. to an Olympic gold in Tokyo. He was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2023. But what Pop was really known for was how he built a culture based on honesty, communication, care, and accountability, which helped him build relationships with everyone who played for or coached with him over those 29 years in San Antonio. Most of the players and coaches who worked for him talk about the off-the-court stuff, like those elaborate team dinners that brought his teams together, as much as the on-the-court stuff. His players said that even Pop's no-nonsense direct approach worked because he also showed an unwavering compassion and care about them as people. Pop treated everybody the same on the roster. He'd give Tim Duncan and David Robinson as much grief for messing up as the guy at the end of the bench. It got everyone on the team to buy into what Pop wanted to do. Terry Porter, who played 3 seasons for Pop, probably put it best, saying, quote, "Players believe Pop cared about them individually before he cared about them as basketball players. It was never just about basketball for Pop. He values family, your kids, your wife, and that helps with the buy-in, the trust." It's why when Pop went to Manu Ginobili and told him that for the Spurs to be the best version of themselves was to have the Argentinian guard come off the bench. He eventually agreed to do it, and championships followed for the team and a 6-Man of the Year award for Ginobili. It's how Pop got, Anthony, you mentioned Ime Udoka. It's how Pop got him to realize that playing overseas for another 2 years before starting his coaching career was pointless. Of all the various branches on Pop's coaching tree, and Ant mentioned some of them, Steve Kerr, Mike Brown, Mike Budenholzer, Brett Brown, and others, Udoka's path is one of the more interesting ones. He spent 3 seasons under Popovich as a player. From 07, 09, and then 2010, 2011, his last season in the NBA where he played just 20 games. He was a 33-year-old role player nearing the end of his playing days whose feisty defense and veteran voice helped him hang around for parts of 7 seasons. But the looming NBA lockout had him thinking about playing overseas, making good money internationally, before eventually making coaching his primary passion in his late 30s. That all changed in the summer of 2012 when Udoka came across Pop at a summer league game. Pop pulled Udoka up into the stands away from everybody and told him, quote, Jacques, meaning Vaughn, who was the Spurs assistant at the time, he's getting the Orlando job. There's a spot open. I want you to seriously think about it. Udoka took a while to think about it, but ultimately took the job and would learn under Popovich's wing from 2012 to 2019 in San Antonio. A stretch that included a title in 2014, 2 final appearances in all, and a Western Conference final showing in 2017. The rest is history, as Udoka has become one of the more successful coaches in the NBA. Pop was never afraid to be a trendsetter, whether it was making the Spurs more of a presence internationally. They were at the forefront of bringing European and other non-American born players to the NBA, such as the likes of Tony Parker and Ginobili and among others to the team. Or as Anthony mentioned, hiring the first female assistant in NBA history in Becky Hammond, who spent 16 seasons in the WNBA, the last 8 as a member of the San Antonio Stars. She was a coaching intern while she was an active player, shadowing the staff while she rehabbed from a torn ACL, and then she joined Pop's staff full-time after she retired in 2014. She spent 7 seasons on Pop's staff, becoming one of the top assistants in the NBA. She led the Spurs Summer League team in an event and actually took over for Pop as head coach when he was ejected from a game. She even interviewed for NBA head coaching jobs before taking over the Las Vegas Aces in the W, winning a title in her first year on the bench and then another the following season. She has said that Pop is a huge reason why she is a head coach. She was a little saddened to learn that Pop was stepping down, saying, quote, "That's who mentored me. That's who spent literally thousands of hours with me. Watching him, I was there 8 years. It's a lot of games. It's a lot of practice. It's a lot of coaches meetings. So yeah, my heart's a little heavy for him because I know how much he loves it, but I'm sure he'll crush this role just as much." These are typical stories of the impact Pop had on people beyond just the basketball court. And I read plenty of them last week when the Spurs announced that he was stepping down. But the one that really resonated with me was one about Shawnell Scott, the former St. John's center. He and I overlapped at SJU. His first 2 years there were my last 2 years. He spent just 4 seasons in the NBA, including 1 season in San Antonio in 2000, where he suited up for just 27 games. He averaged 1.6 points, 1.9 boards, barely 0.1 assists. He averaged just 5.3 minutes per game. But to hear Scott tell it, that 1 season playing for Pop changed the course of his life. All Scott knew about Pop before arriving in San Antonio was a preconceived notion, an idea that Pop was, quote, stern, relentless, a hard ass. And the first thing that Pop said to him in no uncertain terms was that Scott needed to get into shape. But Pop's words stuck with Scott, and he held on to them. He wanted to work harder in practice, work extra. On days off, he'd be in the gym. Scott thought he knew what hard work was, what it meant to be in shape, but he said Pop took him to another level he didn't know he had. Scott also saw Pop call out David Robinson in a game against the Lakers, which underscored that Pop was the same with everyone, which resonated with Scott, as did the way that Pop did things, win or lose, during a game or during practice. Scott coaches high school basketball in New York now, and if he loses a bad game, he might get on his team a little, but his approach is not to get on a player or make them feel any worse than they already do. He just gets to the matter at hand. Scott says it's not even things that Pop said to him directly that impacted him the most, but Pop's actions and the way he talked to his players, the way Scott saw him interact with people, the way he got everyone to strive for excellence. Seeing that, the Pop mindset, if you will, he transferred that through the rest of his life. Once he was done playing, he started thinking about the next phase of his life and realized he wanted to better himself, which led to him wanting to work with kids and help them, which led to him going back to school to get a master's in special education. Despite the long hours and hard work, Scott never once thought about quitting. When he finally earned the master's, it brought him a lot of joy. A few years later, he went back to school, this time to earn a master's in educational leadership. Scott says that everything he does now, he tries to be the best he can be and attributes it to Gregg Popovich, saying, quote, "I don't think I would have accomplished all of it if I hadn't spent that year with Pop." That's about as fitting a tribute as Pop could ever get, guys.
He is a man just as much as he is a coach out there.
Amen.
However, I'm not going to be able to top any more of the man stories. So I'll go back to the coaching just for a few minutes. 21 straight years of playing 600 basketball in the regular season. 23 straight years of making the playoffs, one of the best records in American sports. And one thing I just want to say about the way he won 5 titles, but the way he won each title was almost completely different. Bringing in Tim Duncan as a rookie in 1998-99, and being able to, second-year player, not rookie, but being able to get the Twin Towers pretty much right in there his second year, winning, pretty much storming through the playoffs in 98-99, winning their first title, the first title after a team that couldn't get over a conference finals hump. That organization didn't even make the finals until he got there. 2002, 2003, Robinson is pretty much in the twilight of his career. This is now Duncan's team. Parker and Ginobili are pretty much youngins on this team. In fact, there's rumors during that whole entire time that they should be trading for Jason Kidd because Parker just can't handle being a championship point guard. Yeah, they won another title, beating the Nets in 6 games that year. 2 years later, they do it again. Pretty much now this is a well-oiled machine, and they take down the defending champions from the previous year, and they win their 3rd title. 2 years after that, they do it again. They never won titles consecutively, but they were still a dynasty when you think about it all together. And just a great run out together. Tony Parker wins the Finals MVP after a 58-24 season. They easily win title number 4, and then they really remake their image. They've always been known as a defensive team. Then they kind of had to just get into the ways of the NBA. So they kind of get themselves into everything. And by the time we get to 2013, they win the Western Conference Finals. And then, of course, if Ray Allen doesn't make that shot from the corner, they win back-to-back titles. Because in 2014, they won the title. And then a young guy named Kawhi Leonard came in as Duncan is reaching the twilight of his career. And that becomes an offensive Euro-based team that they finally kind of remake everything into it. So I've never seen a coach have a team and just kind of remake it in his image again and again and again. And that's what you get with Pop. That's why he's one of the best coaches of all time, possibly the greatest coach of all time. Just he never won back-to-back titles, but that's nothing really here or there. But he will have a lasting memory that is just going to never be forgotten in the NBA. And he is just almost at the top of this game.
Yeah. You know, I think my favorite memory of Gregg Popovich is he sat Tim Duncan out for a game, and it was a coaching decision. He put Duke did not play the coaching decision 2-0.
Yeah.
On the official scores card. It's funny to say. It's like he wasn't afraid to give his star players just as much grief as the role players. And you were starting to see, and it was kind of cool to see him inherit David Robinson, go through Tim Duncan, and then Kawhi Leonard, Ginobili, Tony Parker, and towards the end, he's even working with a young up-and-coming talent in Victor Wembanyama, and the Spurs showing promise before obviously Wembanyama was lost this season for health issues. Obviously, the blood clot, they had to shut him down. But to see him go through these different eras and then see the Spurs, like you said, Rabbi, just kind of remake themselves each and every time, depending on the talent and the roster that he had. I don't think I don't think there was a head coach that did a better job of adjusting to the talent and the personnel he had at his disposal than Gregg Popovich. Because as you mentioned, all 5 of those championships was won differently, from Tim Duncan and David Robinson, kind of an inside-out game, to more, Duncan playing through Tim Duncan, to more like when they got Kawhi, being more of a up-tempo, fast-paced team. To now with Wembanyama, a guy who's a stretch 5, he can shoot, and just kind of adds another dynamic to an offense. Like, just the changes and the way to adapt, which just been.
They interestingly enough just have a way to like continue on, and I think that's going to be able to whoever ends up being the next coach of the Spurs.
It's Johnson. They took the interim tag off him this week. He has the job.
They did? Okay, cool. I apologize for not doing the research on that.
Oh, hey, the number of times you're one up on the two of us, that's it.
Apologize for not doing the research on that, but it's going to be interesting to see what the next iteration of this Spurs team looks like. We need Victor Wembanyama's head. All right. The Boston Celtics have a lot of history as they hold the most common playoff matchup in the NBA's existence. That would be against the Philadelphia 76ers. But number 2 is against the New York Knicks. Only 6 more times to go, guys. Got to take down the Sixers somewhere in a race of history. After the Knicks fought past the Pistons in round 1, the defending champs in round 2 was almost an inevitability, almost seemingly like these two teams were meant to meet since January. So here we are. And God, having a lot of things happen. And after the Knicks came down from 20 in the second half to win game 1 in overtime, 108-105. I didn't think there was a chance that would happen again, and it did. They did the same damn thing. Down 20, winning 91-90. The Celtics had a 98% win expectancy in game 1 in the second half, and in the second game, they had a 99% win expectancy at one point. Madness. By the way, 2 other games this round have also had a 98% win expectancy for the home team that they have blown. Insane. All right. We're going to talk about a few different things. Anthony, give me the positive that you've seen in Beantown from the Knicks, even though I've heard about all of the negatives from you for the last 4 days. But you would be a positive that needs to come back to Manhattan for games 3 and 4 for the Knickerbockers.
To quote former ESPN personality Jason Smith, no one does drama quite like the NBA playoffs once you get past round 1. And then we see plenty of that in the last week. But the positive is pretty obvious one, and it's the NBA Clutch Player of the Year, Jalen Brunson. And there's a reason why he won Clutch Player of the Year. It's because he led the NBA in clutch points with close to 6 per game, 51% from the field, and dished out close to 2 assists in those situations. Think about this: only 3 players have scored 75 plus 4-quarter points through the first 7 games of a postseason run in the play-by-play era, which is 1997, 1998 at the beginning of that. Steph Curry, 2003, Kobe Bryant, 2008, and Jalen Brunson this season. And obviously, coming off a 40-point performance where he hit the game-winning shot to send the Knicks into round 2. And obviously, look, there's a reason why the Knicks were down 20 in back-to-back games. Obviously, James going to point that out at his angle. But also, there's a reason why they came back to win those games. And Jalen Brunson was a big part of that. In game 1, he scored 20 points in the second half on 6 of 10 shooting, scored 11 of those in the fourth quarter on 3 of 5 shooting. And also, on top of that, he's doing it, and I keep in mind, he's doing this against really good defensive players. Azul Thompson in round 1 for the Detroit Pistons, and now in round 2, he's doing this against Drew Holiday, who was an All-NBA defensive player, He's done it against Al Horford on a switch as a pick and roll. The fact that he at 6'2" and his body control and how he's able to just be able to get his shots has been ain't short of phenomenal. I mean, we kind of saw his tightrope walking footwork in the first 2 games in this series, driving along the baseline. And of course, in game 2, he actually struggled shooting the ball. He was only 2-9 from behind the arc and shot with 6-17, but he finished 17 points. But again, he scored 9 points in the fourth quarter and scored the next final 6 points in the game 2 comeback, including the 2 free throws that gave the Knicks the lead for good. Obviously, and the funny part about this is Jalen Brunson outscored the Boston Celtics by himself in the final 5 minutes of the last 2 quarters, 17-13. And it's just, and the list go on and on. Just give me a second here. The only player in NBA history with 40 points and 5 assists in 4 consecutive playoff games. That was actually last season. Most 40-point playoff games the last 3 seasons. He got 7 of those. And the fact that everyone in the building knows who's going to get the ball and the other team still doesn't have an answer for him speaks volumes of just how much Jalen Brunson has embraced the moment. His cool and calm presence that Tom Thibodeau has actually talked about and praised time and time again this season. And we've seen it over and over again. When the game is on the line, you know who's going to get the ball, number 11, and he's not afraid of the moment. And it's a big part as to why the Knicks have a 2-0 lead going back home to Madison Square Garden for the next 2 games.
Let me just remind you that with all the talk about how Nico Harrison traded Luka Doncic, he also let this guy go to the Knicks for a 4-year, $100 million deal, which in today's NBA is considered chump change. Just
yeah. By the way, I think I saw an article on Yahoo about the Dallas Mavericks basically committing point guard assassination with the fact that they seem to let really good guards walk. If you go all the way back to Jason Kidd in his prime, in his earlier days. Yeah, it's pretty bad for the Dallas Mavericks these days. But Jalen Brunson, I mean, and you think about how he left money on the table last season, during last offseason, to pretty much help the Knicks as far as putting together a good team. A rarity in today's sports dynamic. He has put himself in a position where not only did he earn the team captain honor, but the fact that he is driven by winning a championship. And right now, the Knicks are halfway into the first conference final trip in 2000. Still a long way to go. Still it's far from over. The Celtics are the defending champs for a reason. But if they're going to finish the job, or at the very least, kind of insert themselves further with this series lead, Jalen Brunson is going to have to be the guy. He's going to have to shoot better than he did in game 2. And obviously, the Knicks are going to have to play a lot better. But Brunson's going to have to be at the center of everything, good or bad, for the New York Knicks.
We'll see what happens. But there have been some negatives in this. So let's see, Jay, if we can find a negative for the Knicks that needs to stay at 100 Legends Way at TD Bank Garden for games 3 and 4, so the Knicks may not have to go back to 100 Legends Way at TD Bank Garden.
Yeah, and the negative that kind of needs to be fixed is, they need to stop losing the possession battle by losing the rebounding and turnover battles. I'm as surprised as anyone that the team with the 2-0 lead in this series is the Knicks, which had me wondering about the negative that they need to fix when the series resumes at the world's most famous arena Saturday night. But as Anthony reminded me, the awful 3-point shooting by the Celtics overshadowed the fact that the Knicks do need to do a better job winning the possession game. And that starts with rebounding, keeping your opponent off the offensive glass. You want them to be one shot and done. And turnovers, limiting yours, especially the live ball kind, to avoid giving your opponent extra possessions. Let's take it game by game. Game 1, the Knicks allowed the Celtics to grab 19 offensive rebounds. That's almost 34% of their missed shots, which they converted into 24 second chance points. The Knicks managed just 12 offensive rebounds of their own, just 23.1% of their missed shots, which they converted into 20 second chance points. So from the standpoint of extra possessions, they lost the rebounding battle. And the Knicks forced 14 turnovers, 10 came on steals, and converted them into 17 points. They committed 13 turnovers of their own. Boston converted those into 15 points. So they ultimately lost the turnover battle. So they ultimately won the turnover battle. However, overall, Boston had 32 extra possessions, while the Knicks had just 26 extra possessions, and the Celtics made more of those extra possessions. You couple that with some awful free throw shooting. New York was 17 of 31. It's 54.8% from the line, while Boston was 22 of 26, 84.6%. And the Knicks were lucky to come away with their 3-point overtime win. If the Celtics had shot even just 33.3%, making one out of every three from beyond the arc, let alone anywhere near close to their regular season mark of 36.8, the Knicks lose this game. Game 2, the Knicks allowed the Celtics to grab 16 offensive rebounds, 30.8% of their missed shots, which they converted into 23 second chance points. The Knicks managed just 10 offensive rebounds of their own, 22.2% of their missed shots, which they converted into just 14 second chance points. So once again, they lost the rebounding battle from the standpoint of extra possessions. The Knicks forced 17 turnovers, 11 came on steals, but converted them into just 14 points. They committed 16 turnovers of their own, which Boston converted into a whopping 25 points. So they very much lost the turnover battle. Neither team had a definitive advantage at the free throw line. The Knicks were 8 for 10. Boston was 12 for 15. It's 80% for each team. But once again, the Celtics won the overall extra possession battle 32-27 and made more of their extra possessions. So once again, the Knicks were lucky to have come away with the 1-point win because, once again, had the Celtics shot even just 33.3% from beyond the arc, let alone anywhere close to that regular season 36.8 mark, the Knicks lose this game. The Knicks coming back twice from 20-point deficits to win both games in Boston is a testament to their never-give-up attitude. Jalen Brunson putting on his cape in clutch time, and Mikal Bridges coming up with a pair of impressive late-game defensive gems. But they're losing to the Celtics in the margins so far in this series, and Boston was actually a better road team than home team this season, so it'll be incumbent on the Knicks to do a better job winning the possession battle as this series goes on, because you can't take it on faith that the Celtics will continue to lay bricks from beyond the arc.
Okay, so let's talk about, according to Wikipedia, this job is different from a mason, and as a craftsperson who lays something to construct something, this is a hobby, and it's also was done by British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. The hobby is bricklaying. It's also been done at the TD Bank Garden over the first 2 games by the Boston Celtics.
I was wondering where you were going with that, Rabbi, but well, it took you a minute to get there, but very well done.
We had to take a little bit of a path. Now, I had said in the beginning of this analysis that I was going to do that the great Michael Scott and Michael Jordan said the following: you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And for Boston, they missed 75% of the threes that they do take. Also, not only I wrote it for game 1, I didn't have to change anything for game 2 because they had the same 25% from beyond the arc. Game 1, they were 15 of 60, which was an NBA playoff record in missed threes. Game 2, they were 10 of 40. And yes, of course, I think you don't even need to be a genius to find out that 75 missed three-pointers is the most ever in the NBA playoffs by a team. Let's just talk about game 2 in a second. From 3, Derek White, 3 of 11. Sixth man of the year, Peyton Pritchard, 3 of 9. Al Horford, 0 of 5. Now, it is a make or miss league. I completely understand why the Celtics won the title last year. They shot the 3. They shoot the 3 more than any team in NBA history did in the regular season. But in close games, when you need a bucket, when you're down with 7 minutes to go, guess what? You might want to take some chances on a lanky team who has Karl-Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson do provide sides. They're never in there at the same time. Knicks would never ever even think of doing that. But you can get drive on them. They just decided not to. What was the Celtics' best play in game 2? When Jason Tatum literally drove to the basket, and it was basically the only defense that happened over there because they almost won the game on that basket. Okay, so let's just talk about it really quick. Again, 10 3-pointers on 40 attempts in game 2. Again, the Celtics are the most prolific 3-point shooting team in league history. Most 3-pointers made, most 3-pointers attempted by any team ever in the regular season. But they made 10 3-pointers on 40 attempts in game 2. They hadn't done that, make 10 3-pointers. They only made 10 or fewer 3-point shots in a game in 3 of their 82 games in the regular season. Their regular season average, after shooting at 25%, is 11.8% better than the 25%. The Celtics are shooting at least 10% worse in the playoffs compared to the regular season, despite missing a record amount of 3-pointers. If the Celtics missed 72 3-pointers in the first 2 games rather than the 75 that they missed, guess what? It's a 2-0 series for the Boston Celtics, and they're in control. The Celtics shooting woes for the Knicks, by the way, don't just go off. Let me just talk about the numbers from 3 for a moment, and then I'm going to talk about some of the numbers from 2. Catch and shoot threes. Usually during the season, they were 39.1% on that, 29.1% in that in round 2. Pull-up threes, 33% regular season, 20.5% in round 2. Quarter threes, 38.9%. They dropped to 21.1%. That's a 17.8% average. Above big break threes, down 10.6%. Even in the twos area, catch and shoot, down 10.9% in this series. Pull-ups, down 11.3. Drives, 12.2 down. Post-ups, 18.5 down. They've only taken 6 post-ups in this entire series. And in the paint, they are 9 of 30. That's 15.4% less in the regular season. Yes, the numbers should eventually balance out, although if you're watching the Warriors game tonight, you realize that teams can shoot bad when they don't have everybody in there. And also losing Kristaps Porzingis for the Celtics is a problem because it does lose one option, but you have many others. The Boston Celtics just need to learn that when you have a lead, you do not have to always take the threes to pad it up. You can shoot the 2-pointer. I know we've thought of the Golden State Warriors era that the 3 is more than the 2. Take as many threes as you want, but sometimes you've got to adjust. And that's what Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics kind of need to do for these next 2 games in order to, and I can't believe I'm saying this, make this a series, because the Celtics right now are in a little bit of trouble if they continue shooting like this.
Anthony's mental health would prefer that they not make this a series.
Yeah, I might have a struggle a little bit in this series with the Knicks, but to add to your point, Rabbi, it seemed like Jaylen Brown was the only one who got the memo that, you know what, maybe I should drive a little more. Because when he had the ball, he was taking advantage of the mismatch he would get with Jalen Brunson down low. He was driving, he was being aggressive, and it seemed like everyone else just settled from behind the 3-point arc. It's like, hey, look, if I'm in Knicks, if you want to continue to take 25, 30-foot jump shots and you're bricking them, hey, you're helping me out. I don't have to worry about my bigs getting into foul trouble so much. But a lot of the thing too is though with Jason Tatum, he was getting a lot of criticism for being a little passive. If you are considered one of the faces of the league, you probably should do a better job of shot selection, especially when you have a mismatch and you're selling for 10 amount of jump shots, 17, 18 feet away. I mean, look, any of those shots go down, we're looking at a 2-0 Celtics lead instead of the other way around. And look, get this though, the Knicks haven't played their best basketball and has managed to win 2 games. The Celtics won a series despite shooting 31% from 3 because the Orlando Magic isn't good enough to make them pay for.
They won it in 5, by the way. It wasn't that.
They won pretty easily. And that was kind of one of the overlooked stats. I think we kind of like. I think I made a joke before the show, Rabbi, and you heard it. I was probably one of 5 people who actually watched that entire series. But it was something that was kind of a eye, that caught my eye and said, "Wait a minute, this team can't hit 3-pointers. What's the plan B?" And it's going to be very interesting to see if there is a plan B for the Boston Celtics going to games 3 and 4. And if the Knicks can counter that plan B, but also play a full 48 minutes of their own. I mean, you don't want to be going behind down 20 every game and have to crawl back from it. I mean, there's a reason why you're down 20 in the first place. If it's not for the Boston Celtics kind of kicking themselves in the foot, we could be talking about the Knicks getting swept off the own home court this weekend.
I'll say this. Missoula kind of brushed off the whole not taking the timeout once the Celtics crossed half court on that final possession. But I'll tell you this, the fact that for some reason the Celtics went back to a play that the Knicks had already literally just seen and figured out how to stop it. I'm sorry, to me right there, that's a coach not doing his job. You saved that.
Yes.
You saved that one timeout specifically for that instance right there. Because I'm telling you, this is the playoffs is where coaches earn their money. Calling a timeout to set up a play to get the best possible shot, whether it's for Tatum because he's your best player or anyone else. Where you need to dial up something other than something the Knicks just literally saw 20 seconds ago.
Let me jump in here, by the way, since we've done this. I think because we can do a companion piece show on all of the decisions that's made in game
Fair
1
enough.
and 2.
Fair enough.
But the Knicks said please and thank you after seeing that play.
Oh, yeah.
Lot of things that I can say in there, but we have other series to talk about, and let's do that now. The winners of the only two. All right, let's move on to the other 3 NBA series, all of them except our first series that we're going to talk about is 2 games in, although that's we can talk about at least what we think that series is going to be at. So naturally, let's get that first series out of the way. We'll talk about a player that has stood out from each team, and it could be good or it could be bad. We'll start with the winners of the only 2 series, with the lower seed won in game 1, finding each other here. The Warriors, that they're kind of used to round 2 games and beyond, and the T-Wolves are only here for the second time in a row after missing every one of these second rounds and beyond from 2005 to 2023, but they're building something. Despite Warriors guard Steph Curry suffering a hamstring injury to cause him to miss the second half of game 1 and at least all of game 2, probably going to be longer than that. The Warriors did win.
He'll be out for 3 games. That's the.
It's officially 3 games. Okay, I knew he said it was the week, but I knew it was at least those 2. So Warriors won game 1 of this series, 99-88. Celtics, the T-Wolves are up by about 17 in the later stages of the fourth quarter. Would say it's a safe lead, but welcome to the NBA playoff second round. Anthony, give me a player to watch from each side.
Yeah, unless you're OKC, you run up the score and win by 49 points. I don't think anything's safe in the NBA these days. I'll start with the highest seed Minnesota Timberwolves, and obviously an old friend of ours on this show, Julius Randle, is the guy I'm looking at. Randle's 15 playoff games prior to this season have not been one of the more memorable playoff stretches for anyone. Averaged 17 points, only shot 34% in those contests. Turned the ball over close to 4 times. His turnovers actually outnumbered the amount of assists he had in those games. And obviously, we know that he didn't play well in all these games, obviously, with the Knicks. Talking about 2021, 2023, and last year, was injured and did not take part in last year's postseason run. This year, with the Minnesota Timberwolves, he was a big part of their 5-game, I wouldn't even call it an upset, 5-game series win over the favorite Los Angeles Lakers. Averaged 22 in that series, 4 assists, 2 threes, shot close to 40% from behind the arc. But more importantly, something I was criticized by Julius Randle with the member of his Knicks was his defense on the other side, on the other end of the court. We've seen in games where he struggled offensively, his defensive intensity kind of sags off a little bit, and he looks almost disinterested. Not in the first round, however. His defense was very key. Obviously with Rudy Gobert down the paint as well. Offensively, he really blew past Luka Doncic on a number of occasions when Doncic had to guard him, and those murmurs of Luka Doncic's conditioning didn't die down before. It's not going to die down anytime soon after that series. Game one, he did struggle shooting the ball. Of course, the entire Timberwolves team struggled to shoot the ball in game one. 4 of 11, 18 points, 0 for 3 from behind the arc. A lot better tonight. 8 of 15 from the field, 20 points. Minnesota's up big, but of
17
course,
currently.
they're
Right
17, but not exact. Again, it wouldn't be the safe in today's NBA. And he did go 10 for 10 for the charity stripe in game one. So that is something to build off. But game two tonight, much better performance. Minnesota, if they hold on, they'll at least tie the series. For the Warriors, I was really looking forward to talking about Draymond Green because going into that game set, and look, when you talk about Draymond Green, you take the good with the bad. I feel like I'm going to do some of the facts of life, but no. Draymond, when he's good, he's a leader, a facilitator, a hell of a defender, and a locker room voice. Draymond Green, the bad, technical fouls, loses composure. You almost have to take a timeout to tell him to take a timeout. In game like after a team meeting prior to game 7 against Houston, he talked to his teammates. It was kind of at least we felt like it was a revelation. And Draymond Green had a great performance in that game 7 closer against the Rockets on the road. 16 points on 15 shot attempts. The most he's taken actually since March again in a game against Toronto, March 20 to be exact. And it was the first time he scored in double figures the entire series. So he actually made himself an offensive presence, but also we know Draymond is a great playmaker, set up the offense, whether it was Steph Curry or getting Jimmy Butler involved. In game 1 against Minnesota, he did the exact thing. Just as much. Finished for 18 points, 6 to 13. Hit 4 3-pointers, only second to Buddy Hield's 5 3-pointers, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals. And with Steph Curry being out, but at very least the next 2 games, 3 as well, perhaps the entire series, depending on just how fast he recovers from that hamstring.
Great.
Yeah. He's going to be very important in facilitating that offense as far as getting guys open and getting guys involved. But tonight, game 2, he earned his 5th technical foul. He's got to be careful because he's 2 technical fouls away from an automatic 1-game suspension. And we know what happened in the 2016 finals when he had to serve that game 5 suspension. Yeah. It was definitely part of the turning point in that final series that allowed the Cavs to come back from 3-1 to win that series. But also the talk in the series was a lot about him and Rudy Gobert. And we know about the history with him and Gobert and just the incident that happened a year ago. And if you're a officiating crew, this is one series you're probably not looking forward to for a number of reasons. Between Gobert, questionable tactics, and his whines to officiating, to Draymond Green as well. This is not a fun series if you're an NBA official. But for the Golden State Warriors and with Steph Curry's absence, Draymond's gotta keep his composure in check because the Warriors need him on the court. He cannot afford to get into any silly antics that we saw off and on during that series, first round series against Houston, and again tonight. He has to stay on the court. He has to show his leadership. He has to show his veteran presence too, and he's got to learn to walk away on his own will and not have teammates drag him away from an official after every call that he doesn't like. And it's gonna be key. Even if you gotta have another team meeting, if you Steve Kerr or someone, it's gotta and like Draymond has been open about attending therapy and addressing his mental health, which I applaud, but he's got to do a better job of keeping himself under control because we've seen Draymond lose and it's been at the detriment of his team. And right now, when you don't have the best player, a Batman as Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler is labeled Steph Curry, you've got to stay on the court in one way or another. And for the rest of the series, it's got to be like a parental advisory for Draymond Green. We need you on the court please do not engage in any extra stuff that is going to hurt us as a team. And it's going to be on the rest of his teammates, he's still crowd to kind of beating into him if he doesn't take a hit after tonight.
Yeah. I don't know if you referenced it or not, but after that technical foul, I know you kind of vaguely referenced it. Steve Kerr had to literally sub him out of the game so he wouldn't get another technical foul, which would have ejected him from that game and put him one away.
Yes, and Jimmy Butler had to physically grab him away from the official, and it's like, and this has happened just as we're about to go on the air, and I'm about to rave about Draymond Green keeping himself under control, and it's like, oh, good grief. It's like, now I have to update my notes again to accommodate what just happened.
I feel like that describes Draymond Green to a T, tumultuous enough that you have to continuously update his biography to possibly another thing that's happening. All right, Mr. Statman, I got one stat for you before you go into your series. I have a record number. It is 3 and 1,640. That's going into yesterday. That is the win-loss record of any team down by 7 or more in the fourth quarter in OT during the playoffs. That's not impressive, but when you realize that the cardiac Indiana Pacers are responsible for 2 of the 3 on the winning side over the last 10 days, now you're like, what the hell is going on? And the second one of those 2 came in a 120-119 game 2 shocker that have put the Pacers 2 games to 0 up against the walking wounded, known as the number 1 seed Cleveland Cavaliers, as they head to Indiana. What stood out player-wise on each side, good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, for Cleveland, it's Donovan Mitchell. For the Pacers, it's Tyrese Halliburton. I said it on our NBA playoffs preview, but it's even more relevant as the postseason progresses. Your stars need to play like stars for your team to have a chance to advance. And the choices here reflect that. Well, let's start with that walking mash unit that is the East number 1 seed Cleveland Cavaliers. Donovan Mitchell, 40.5 points per game, 5 boards, 6.5 assists, 2.5 steals, half a block, 34.8 minutes per game, shooting slash line of 46.7 from the floor, 11.1% from 3, 76.7% from the stripe. Mitchell's the captain. Obvious choice here with the Cavs being minus his backcourt mate Darius Garland for both games of this series, and minus defensive player of the year Evan Mobley and key trade acquisition DeAndre Hunter, who was 4th in the 6th man of the year voting for game 2. Mitchell, by necessity, has become a one-man band, and he's had to carry the Cavs for most of these first 2 games. In game 1, Mitchell was 13 of 30 from the floor, 1 of 11 from 3, 6 of 9 from the line. Overall, that's 39 shots to score 33 points. That's a lot of work. He did everything he could, and he did have help. Ty Jerome added 21 points and 8 assists. Evan Mobley had a 20-10 double-double, but the Cavs just shot badly as a team from the floor, beyond the arc, and at the line, and they came up short by 9. But in game 2, Mitchell was quite literally all Cleveland had. It was a Herculean effort. Solid 15 of 30 from the floor. Another struggle from 3. He was just 1 of 7. But he went 17 of 21 from the line, which equates to 51 shots overall to score 48 points to go with 9 assists. He joins LeBron as the only other Cav to have at least 45 points and 5 assists in a playoff game. Now, Mitchell had a similar amount of help as game 1. Max Strus chipped in with the points, 23. Jarrett Allen had the double-double this time with 22 and 12. But once again, it was not enough as Indiana came from 17 down to steal game 2. Per Dan Feldman of the Dunked on Basketball NBA podcast, Mitchell's game 2 performance was just the 6th in StatHead.com's database, where a player had a usage rate of at least 50% in a playoff game with at least 20 shot attempts. That means half of Cleveland's plays with Mitchell on the court ended, on average, with him shooting, turning the ball over, or going to the free throw line. Through 2 games, Mitchell has an overall usage rate of 46.4%. Jerome at 28.4% is the only other Cav that's played both games whose usage rate is over 17%. Indiana has made Mitchell the textbook definition of a volume shooter. He's taken 30 shots in each game from the floor. He's 28 of 60 overall. But if you remove that abysmal 2 of 18 from three, he's actually 26 of 42 inside the arc. That's 61.9%. More shots inside the arc, Donovan. Whenever the Cavs needed a bucket or just someone to keep the Pacers at bay, Mitchell was the captain obvious choice, not as much because of how good he is, but more so because there was no one else on the floor who could really be counted on. That's the epitome of a one-man band, and it's not sustainable for Cleveland. The Cavs can't afford players missing more games. Garland has now missed 4 consecutive playoff games with a big toe injury that continues to be problematic. Now, the Cavs have shown that they are capable of winning without Garland, but getting him back would take some of the offensive load off of Mitchell. This was glaringly evident in Game 2 as Mobley, who was their best defender, couldn't play due to a sprained ankle. Had he been available, maybe Halliburton doesn't get his own missed free throw and doesn't get a chance at a game-winning shot. Hunter has a bum thumb. Had he been available, he could have added some depth and some offense to a second unit that saw Jerome go ice cold, shooting 1 of 14 from the floor, including 0 for 4 from beyond the arc, scoring just 2 points. Look, Donovan Mitchell is fully capable of carrying a team. He averaged 28.3 points per game in the playoffs in the 5 years he was in Utah, and he's averaged 28 even so far in his 3 years in Cleveland. But if the Cavs are to rebound from being down 0-2, which has only happened 34 times in 463 playoff series where a team trailed 0-2, at the bare minimum, they need Garland back. Because Mitchell can't win this series on his own, not with the way the Pacers are playing. And speaking of the Indiana Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton's averaging 20.5 points per game, 6 boards, 8.5 assists, half a steal, 2 blocks in 36.1 minutes per game. He's shooting 61.5% from the floor, 50% from 3, and 71.4 from the line. I'm not a member of the camp that believes, via a players poll by The Athletic, that Halliburton is the most overrated player in the NBA. But with that narrative hanging over his head, it is somewhat imperative that he step up and stand out, especially in this series. And so far, he's done that, and is a big reason why the Pacers are up 2-0. In Game 1, the Pacers point guard was the epitome of Clyde Frazier's swishing and dishing, scoring 22 points, including a go-ahead three-pointer midway through the fourth quarter. One of only 2 he made all night, along with 13 assists against just 1 turnover. He also made critical defensive plays, including 3 blocks, one of which was on a 3-point attempt by Struss with 2:12 left, which he then took all the way the other end for a layup, giving the Pacers a 10-point lead. They ultimately won 121-112. Halliburton shot well from the floor. He was 9 of 15 overall, though he was just 2 of 6 from 3 and only 2 of 2 from the line. He was the only Pacer who didn't shoot the 3 well, as the team overall was 19 of 36, is 52.8%. But those 13 assists led to 34 points, including 8 of those 19 threes. In Game 2, Halliburton was less of a stat sheet stuffer, just 7 for 11 from the floor. Took and hit only a pair of threes, went 3 of 5 from the line. He totaled 19 points, but only 4 assists. And while he took a backseat in the box score, 4 other Pacers scored in double figures, led by 23 apiece from Miles Turner and Aaron Nesmith. He knocked down the biggest shot of the night with the game literally on the line. Halliburton was fouled, went to the line with 12 seconds left, hit the first, missed the second. Somehow, he managed to not only rebound that missed free throw from within all of the bodies, crashing the glass, but created enough space between himself and Ty Jerome to drain his second 3 of the night with 1.1 left to win the game, 120-119. Look, this is an Indiana Pacers team that knows its identity and is gelling at the right time. They dictate tempo with the NBA's 9th most efficient offense and knock opponents off their rhythm with the NBA's 14th most efficient defense. Halliburton is the maestro, consistently getting his teammates good shots and rarely turning the ball over. So far in this series, 17 assists, 1 turnover. He's leading his team in scoring. Granted, it's just by half a point per game over Nesmith. But among the Pacers starting 5, he has the lowest usage rate, just 18.1%. So he's been very efficient, as evidenced by his 70.5 true shooting percentage and 69.2 effective field goal percentage. Both of those are second in Nesmith. Calling his own number in ISOs has never really been Halliburton's thing. He works better setting everyone else up and getting his offense within the flow of the offense, within the flow of the offense or out on the break. But when the Pacers need him to, they know he can get them buckets, as evidenced by the 11 points he scored in the fourth quarter of Game 2. The Pacers are the epitome of team, and they like it that way. Halliburton said it best, saying, quote, "That's a total team win for us. That's who we are. We're not a one-man show. We have so many guys who can chip in and get double figures. We had 6 guys in double figures tonight. And that's been the theme for us and our success many times. But there's a reason that Mitchell asked the Cavs crowd to stop with the overrated chants that were directed at Halliburton. He's the engine that drives this Pacers bus. And if he keeps doing it like this, everyone will be choking on that word after the series is over.
That means he'll be rated instead of overrated, because I don't know how that ended up being him. It's the top. I really don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, it was a player's poll, though not every player actually took part in it. So, you know, you gotta say that the data might be, as my niece Harmony would be saying, is a little sus.
Yeah, very sus. Very, very sus. Okay.
See, but I think that's jealousy, because you know what? Tyrese Halliburton is a perfect example of getting an A without lifting up fingers.
Yep.
He had a gold medal, but basically that's not getting away.
Hey,
you know what? He's still proud of it. He even posted about it. Like,
gold medal saying, you know,
yeah, hey, I'll take it.
You get an A, but barely did anything on the project, you know. But I mean, look, honestly, he took it in stride. But I mean, and that's kind of an example, you know, that kind of shows you some insight into who he is as a person. But here's the thing. We all knew that, like, we knew that, like, there were going to be instances where, whether or not the Cavs were healthy or not, there were going to come points in the game where it was going to be give Mitchell the ball and get out of the way. The Pacers don't operate like that. And as long as all 5 of those guys, and their bench has been solid as well, as long as that unit keeps playing with the cohesion that they have shown, and they have won in different ways in these first 2 games, even if the Cavs get everybody back for game 3, this is going to be a tough hole for them to dig out of.
Yeah, and who would have ever thought that the Knicks and Pacers right now are in pole position with the 2-0 lead going home? I don't think we ever would have thought that.
I think I know who would have thought that. Remember last summer SmackDown? Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Brunson? Is it foreshadowing?
I've seen that. It's so shocking.
I was there that night, remember?
I know. All right. Finally, let's talk about the Nuggets and the Thunder. And if you're going to do stars needing to be stars, how about the 2 best players in the league? Obviously, Denver coming back from double digits in game 1. OKC finally proving a lead is safe when you score 149 points in game number 2. These are the 2 players that are 1-2 for MVP. One of them is just the second person in a long time to average a triple-double for the season. The first one is his teammate, who did it 8 years ago for the team that he's currently playing against right now in Russell Westbrook against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And oh yeah, he's not the favorite to win the award. SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is. Okay, now with that preamble, let's talk about how Nikola Jokic and SGA have done so far in this series. Obviously, Jokic is the Denver Nuggets. It's really been almost a one-man show this year for the Nuggets. Jokic has put on numbers that have been outstanding again, doing it, having a season-long triple-double. And he's had 2 real standout games in these playoffs. The first one was the game 4, down 2-1 against the Los Angeles Clippers, where he put on your garden variety 36, 21, and 8 line in that game. And then he just decided to top it on Monday night with a 42, 22, and 6 line as he really helped the charge. Of course, Eric Gordon was the one that finished it off with the jumper, 3.1 seconds left remaining in the 4th quarter. Nuggets trailing by as much as 14 in that game. Played 42 minutes in that game, 15 of 29 from the field. It was a dominant performance. Jokic was the person who was keeping that team in the game. But in game 2, he looked mortal. And once he looks mortal, the rest of the team is going to look even more mortal. 17 points for Jokic, 6 of 16 shooting. He did have 8 rebounds and 6 assists, but he also had 6 turnovers in that game. And it was one of the worst playoff performances of his career. He fouled out in the third quarter and had a minus 36.
Yowza.
Minus. Now, he has to be the guy to win these games. Now, he's had team efforts before. He only had to go 16-10-8. I can't believe I just said the phrase only had to be 16-10-8 in game 7 against the Clippers. And he has been really good in situations where he's had to put the team on his back. But the Thunder got physical with him yesterday, and it really rocked him. It really rocked him a lot in that game. And if he is going to have that happen to him, it's going to affect the rest of the team, and you might as well just pack up and go from that. Jamal Murray has just not played like the finals MVP himself that he was in 2023. I think it was Jokic who was finals MVP, but he was pretty much on that same level. And the team is just really the only one who's been consistently making shots for that team in clutch situations is Aaron Gordon. So the Nuggets are going to have to do a lot more to get themselves in that series. And Jokic has got to be the catalyst of it. If he has to put his team on his back, so be it. We've always talked about, though, that the Thunder, from top to bottom, is one of the most complete teams that honestly we've seen in NBA history.
Yep.
And when you lead by 11 points just 6 minutes into the game, extended to 24 by the first quarter, and have an NBA playoff record for first half scoring with 87 points at halftime. And remember, scoring in the playoffs is a lot harder to do because you don't see 120 points on the regular. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had a voila performance. He's had some good games in these playoffs, but in the Grizzlies series, he didn't need to be the catalyst. And now, as the stakes get higher, he needs to be the star. He was 34 points in this game, 11 of 13 shooting. Insane for someone in his position. 8 assists, and nobody in the play-by-play era of the NBA that dates back to 1998 has had the number of the plus-minus that he had. He had a plus-minus 51 in 30 minutes. In the first 2 games, he's averaged 33.5 points on 59% shooting, 7 rebounds, 8 assists. 3 times he has turned the ball over, and he has played 70 minutes of court time. What he has done has been insane. You don't see a precision that is rarely witnessed on the big stage when you see SGA. 11 of 11, 11 of 11 from the line. Just Mark Daigneault described the outing as a nice floor game, and yeah, Mark Daigneault says that because if that was a nice floor game, I am a Rhodes Scholar, because that was one of the most dominant performances. Now, Shai, again, he doesn't need to be that amazing. He's had some performances from the field. He was 4 of 13 in game 1 against Memphis, 10 of 29 in game 2 against Memphis, 10 of 26. The best he had shot from the field was 54.2%. But what he did in his numbers, by the way, have been insane. His volume has been insane. 27. He had 31 points in game 3 against Memphis, and that comeback victory, one of the largest in the second half in playoff history. 38 in game 4, 33 in game 1, 34 in game 2. But if SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is as efficient as he is, and he is likely to lock up his first MVP next week, the Thunder are going to be unstoppable in this series and probably unstoppable in the rest of the Western Conference playoffs. SGA is just an anomaly out there, and he has proven it so far in these first 2 games. All right, let me breathe for a second, and now let's go to the NHL. Been a while since we've said this phrase. Time for the quest for Lord Stanley's chalice. Check it off, Jay.
Hell yeah.
Let's talk about the 4 series currently going on, and also talk about some players on both sides of the ice. Starting in the East, with their most common playoff nemesis, Boston, sitting at home, didn't even make the playoffs this year. The Toronto Maple Leafs found themselves nice and comfortable in round number 2. And now here comes their other playoff nemesis of recent times. That's the team that bounced them 2 years ago in this round. The 2-time defending Eastern Conference champs and reigning chalice champs, check it again, in the Florida Panthers. as the Leafs held serve at home to give themselves a 2-0 lead in this series. Toronto didn't show. What kind of downward universe are we in, ladies and gentlemen? It really is the upside down. Anthony, give me a player from each team, one from the Six, one from that team in Sunrise, Florida.
Well, since I've been to both, I had to flip a coin, and I'll take the team up north to start out. The player I'm looking at for the Maple Leafs is William Nylander, and on a team that has as many offensive weapons as the Toronto Maple Leafs, Nylander is the leading scorer so far in this postseason for the Maple Leafs. He had 9 points in the first round series win against Ottawa, 3 goals, 6 assists in 6 games, including 4 points on a power play, 1 goal, 3 assists. When Nylander's on the ice, he's the game changer, witnessing the 2 goals and assists they score in the game 6 clincher. For the Maple Leafs to get past Florida, he's got to be a big part of it, and he has been. Literally, it only took him literally 33 seconds to be part of the Toronto Maple Leafs being up 2-0, scoring the opening goal of Game 1, beating Sergei Bobrovsky to put Toronto on the board. He scored. He ended Game 1 with 2 goals in that victory, and a third goal in Game 2. So far, and this is something I just looked up prior to us being on the air. With 6 goals already in the 2025 playoffs, Nylander sitting currently behind Mikko Rantanen and Nathan MacKinnon for most goals scored. But also, it's also a historic moment for the Maple Leafs. It's the most goals scored by any Toronto player in a single postseason since 2004. William Nylander was 8 years old, by the way, in 2004.
It was.
So you're going a very long way back. For the Florida Panthers, it's Matthew Tkachuk, and when he's not being called out by fans for questionable hits on opposing players. Remember, he suffered an injury in the Four Nations face-off that limited him to the final. That had him missing a lot of. He missed the final 25 games of the regular season, and the Panthers basically had to gradually bring him back in as far as increasing his ice time, and get back on the ice. But I tell you what, the first 2 games of the series, he is really not good healthy. He hasn't been the same player that we've seen from him. Did record 5 points in the 5-game series win against Tampa Bay, 3 goals, 2 assists. But you can just see on the ice, he just doesn't look the same, doesn't have the same explosiveness. It was his second line in Game 2 that gave up a goal. In 18 minutes, he had his plus minus is a -2. And it is really something to kind of keep an eye on as the series progress, because Florida, the defending champs, going back home down 0-2. You need all your key players to be at 100% and play at their best. And right now, Tkachuk is not only struggling in this series on the stat sheet, but also his health as well. You can just see that he's not the lateral movement is not quite there. Game 2 is actually the most minutes he's played on the ice really since coming back at 18 minutes. But you can just kind of see that the health is not quite there, and it's going to be a question mark if he can kind of play like at least contribute anything at all in this series, as just like we saw in the first round, where in sparingly minutes he was able to contribute. At least on the stat sheet, but right now it doesn't look good, and I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, if he's not able to move up and down the ice, they're trying to limit his practice time to at least get him ready. Obviously, the 5-game series helped because they had the time off, but you can tell he's just not 100%. And don't be surprised if this series does progress and he's not moving well, and then he becomes a scratch. And have to sit out the game.
And that's not going to be good news for them if that has to happen.
I can hear Toronto Maple Leafs fans saying, "Cry me a river. We lost our goalie thanks to Max. Thanks to the actions of Florida in game number 1." And Anthony Stollart's getting injured and won't even be in Florida for game 3. Probably won't be there for game 4 either. But Joseph Woll doing a damn good job winning game number 2. They're both pretty good goalies for Toronto, so we'll see what happens. Okay. For two teams that have not played each other at all in the postseason, the Washington Capitals and Carolina Hurricanes, seems like they hate each other so much, but they've only met once in the playoffs in 2019. They split games 1 and 2. They'll go back to Raleigh this weekend. So, Jay, let's head down I-95 and talk about the teams that the players that both teams need to see as the series heads to games 3 and 4.
Yeah, for Washington, it's Alex Ovechkin, and for Carolina, it's Sebastian Aho. I mean, the Stanley Cup playoffs are a different animal compared to the postseason in any of the 4 major sports. But it has one thing in common with all the other stick and ball sports. Your stars need to play like stars for your team to have a chance to advance. Choices here reflect that, as each player is the focal point of their team. Ovechkin, top 40 goals for the 15th time in his career, leading the Caps with 44 en route to breaking the Great One's all-time career goal scoring record. Those 44 goals were tied for number 3 in the NHL, behind the 45 by the aforementioned William Nylander of the Leafs and the 52 by Leon Draisaitl of the Oilers. Ovechkin's 0.6 goals per game were second to Draisaitl's 0.73. His 30 goals at even strength, good for 6th, tied with Kyle O'Connor of the Jets. His 14 on the power play, good for 5th, tied with 6 others. He was a big reason why the Caps got past the Canadiens in round 1. He scored a team-leading 4 goals, 2 at even strength, 2 on the power play, including the game winner in overtime in game 1. He totaled 5 points and was +6 for the series. Both were second best for Washington. Part of the reason that Ovechkin is the NHL's all-time leading goal scorer is his ability to give the Caps lightning strike goals, which can flip the script of a game or a series. It's a weapon the Caps will need against a team that can control the puck at the elite level that the Canes are capable of, especially at 5-on-5. The Caps are unlikely to have many scoring chances on the power play against the Canes, who were number 1 in the NHL on the penalty kill, 83.6%. They were perfect 15 of 15 on the kill against the Devils. Washington had only 1 other power play goal besides the 2 from Ovechkin, and they were 3 of 13 overall. It's 23.1% with the man advantage. Caps were second in the NHL in goals for at 5-on-5, 190. Carolina was 21st in the NHL in goals against at 5-on-5. So how this plays out will be key for the Caps. If they can efficiently get the puck out of their own zone, they can counter the Canes' forecheck, which is relentless. Can they repeat what they did against the Habs, where their goals for per 60 minutes was a rate of 2.66? If so, Ovechkin will be a big reason why. Washington outscored Montreal 5-2 with him on the ice at 5-on-5, and Ovechkin led the team with 19 hits. The key is to keep him involved and on the puck as much as possible, as he's less effective away from it. He only had 1 shot on goal in 17 minutes and 12 seconds of ice time in the game 1 loss, and he had only 3 shots on goal in just 14 minutes and 36 seconds of ice time in the game 2 win. The Caps are likely to need more than that from Alex Ovechkin if they're going to advance. Now, the Canes are the epitome of team. Each forward line and defense pairing works together as a 5-man unit, whether attacking the opposing goaltender or defending their own netminder. But even in a system like theirs, someone is the focal point, and no surprise here, it's Aho. The Canes forward led the team in assists, 45 points, 74, and was second in goals, 29. And was his usual clutch self. He had 9 game-winning goals in the regular season, tied with 3 others for third most in the NHL. Now, the Hurricanes lead all teams in the postseason in offensive zone time percentage, 46.6%, just as they did during the regular season, tick up at 47.2%. Aho, at 50.2%, was second in the NHL in offensive zone time percentage and number 1 among forwards. Carolina, who also ranked first this postseason in 5-on-5 shot attempts percentage, 58.4%, had a big advantage in that category, 73.1% compared to the Caps, 26.9%, in their game 1 overtime win. Carolina controlled 74% of their shot attempts in the game 1 overtime win over Washington, outshooting the Caps. This is not a misprint, guys, 94-34. Carolina's number one line with Aho centering Andrei Svechnikov and Jackson Blake were pretty much able to do whatever they wanted when they had the puck. They combined for 7 shots on goal. Now, Aho carried his clutch regular season play into the first round series win over New Jersey. 3 power play goals, with his third being the series clincher in the Game 5 win over the Devils, giving him 10 goals and 15 points in the 14 potential series clinching games he's played in. Overall, he led the team in assists with 5 and points with 8, 5 of them on the power play. And those 3 goals were second, as were his 14 shots on goal. The Canes will need Aho's steady play. He's the franchise's all-time leader in postseason goals, assists, and points. He averages almost a point per game in the playoffs, 78 points on 30 goals, 10 on the power play, and 48 assists in 80 career playoff games at 0.975 points per game, if they're going to get past the Cavs. 1 assist and only 1 shot on goal in the Game 2 loss isn't going to get it done. The Canes will need more from Sebastian Aho.
Yeah, the Eastern Conference playoffs is almost like a crapshoot, you think. I don't think any of those teams are out of it just yet, even at the Panthers at 2-0, because again, part of a champion, they've won the last 2 Eastern Conference titles. Okay. On to the West ones. The President's Trophy winners. Dun, dun, dun. The Winnipeg Jets showed the cardiacness of only that the Indiana Pacers could dream of with an OT Game 7 win after tying their game versus St. Louis with 1.6 seconds left. Their opponent is the Dallas Stars, owners of the 4th ever comeback from a multi-goal deficit in Game 7. And whatever, the Winnipeg Jets just became the 5th team to do that a day later. Stars player to watch, we'll get to the Jets player in a second, but the Stars player to watch is a guy who has scored the only hat trick in a third period in NHL history, and that's Mikko Rantanen. Massive Game 7 effort against the Dallas Stars, scoring 3 goals, including the last one on an empty netter against the team he started the season with, and that would be scoring 64 points with the Colorado Avalanche. Avalanche couldn't afford him, shipped him out to Carolina. Carolina at the trade deadline couldn't work out any deal with him, so he sent him to Dallas, who is all in for a title this year. Mikko wanted to stick it to Colorado badly, and boy, if you score a hat trick in the third period of decided Game 7, you've done just that. Congratulations. But again, what did Mikko just do in Game 1 of the series against the Jets? How about a second hat trick in a row? Stars were down 1-0 in the second period when Rantanen was being double shifted the entire game. He scored at the 8:43 mark, the 14:21 mark, and then on the power play at the 16:38 mark. Of course, he just scores his hat tricks in periods, essentially. And that gave the Stars a 3-1 lead. They would go on to win 3-2. Rantanen, at the end of the night, was the NHL playoff scoring leader at the end of the night. With 8 goals and 7 assists for 15 points. He has either scored or assisted on the last 12 consecutive Stars goals and has now posted 8 goals and 6 assists in his last 4 games. The name of the Winnipeg scouting report should be Mikko Rantanen, and that's it. Full stop. And it still hasn't mattered. So there ain't no other choice to go for Star Watch. And honestly, for the Winnipeg Jets, for my opinion, there ain't no other choice to go to Star Watch than their goalie Connor Hellebuyck. It's all but a certainty that we're going to see a 3rd Vezina Trophy come this year for Mr. Hellebuyck. The numbers this season, in what has been a storied career, he was also, by the way, the goalie for Team USA in the 4 Nations, is outstanding. A goals against average of 2. Nothing else after it, just 2. 47, 12, and 3 this season in his 63 games in goal. He did it all. However, he has not had a good postseason so far. Yes, he won all of his home games in the first series, but right now he has a save percentage of .830. That would be let's assume he's going to win the Vezina Trophy because it seems he's pretty much a lock. That would be the worst by that year's Vezina winner since 1996, the second worst in the 42 years since the award was voted on. Hellebuyck's minus 9.82 goals saved above expected ranks last in these playoffs. And that is the third worst mark by any goalie since that stat was tracked, and that started in 2007. Last year, he allowed 24 goals in 5 games against Colorado. That strained his self-confidence. But on the eve of these playoffs, he explained he was going to go after a shutout every game, and that he just kept putting more weight on his shoulders. And again, he did stop. It didn't really matter. He did stop 21 of 24 shots in that Wednesday 3-2 loss to the Stars in Game 1. He has a continuous time to think, and he might be thinking just a little bit too much. So we're going to see what happens. I'm going to also pick a goalie and a player for the next series. It's the Oilers and the Golden Knights. Oilers won Game 1. When you have the West champs and the Stanley Cup champs of 2023, and the West champs and the 1 game away of being Cup champs in 2024, bring the Scorsese absolute cinema picture out. Here we go. Edmonton up again, by the way, tonight as well in the second period. Let's go Captain Obvious here. It's Connor McDavid for the Edmonton Oilers. Oilers rallied from a 2-0 deficit, and they have a 5th straight comeback victory. They lost the first 2 games against the Kings. They've won 5 straight since. McDavid, in that game, had an assist on Corey Perry's goal to cut the deficit to 2-1. The 5th player in NHL history now McDavid is to record 10 or more assists in 4 consecutive postseasons. The names on that list are Wayne Gretzky, Jari Kurri, and Mark Messier on the same team at one point. He also has 90 assists, and it only took him 81 games to reach that milestone. That's insane. During last year's playoffs, I think we all know, 34 assists, broke Wayne Gretzky's record of 31 assists in a single postseason campaign. Until yesterday, he was the leading scorer in the playoffs, 2 goals and 11 assists for 13 games so far. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl had 21 points between them in the round 1 series against Los Angeles. I don't like to do gambling odds for hockey, but this is insane. McDavid you could bet on him getting 1 point in every game this series, and it's only at plus 225 to get 1 point in every game of this series. That's almost like considering it's a 2-1 odd that he is going to get a point in every game of this series, which is almost unheard of when you would think, unless you're Superman, and that is Connor McDavid.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to talk about Adin Hill on the other side for the Las Vegas Golden Knights. He was that emergency goalie just 2 years ago to help them win the Stanley Cup. And that Stanley Cup run, where he beat the Florida Panthers in 5 at the end, 11-4 with a 2.17 goals against average, 2 shutouts in 60 playoff games. That got him a 6-year, $37.5 million contract that he signed earlier this season. But the bumps have not been great for Hill in his postseason. He was not good in his first 2 games against the Minnesota Wild. He was pulled after 2 periods of a 5-2 loss in Game 3. But Coach Bruce Cassidy saw him in an overtime winner in the overtime game that he won in Game 4. A little better in Game 5, and then he was the difference maker in Game number 6. He did in that series have a 2.83 goals against average, 880 save percentage over 6 games. Gonna be tough doing it in this series. He did have his best year. He did start by far the most games of his career in one season in 50. He had started 35 the season beforehand and a 2.47 goals against average. With the Oilers right now at 2-1 going into... Now it's 3-2, by the way. My apologies. Going into the end of the second period. Tonight, Adin Hill has had a .824 save percentage. He's let up 3 goals on 17 shots allowed. When you play the Oilers, it's almost pray that you outscore them because the Oilers goalie is usually going to be just as bad on the other side, no matter who they put in net. Tonight, it's Calvin Pickard. He's also let up 2 goals on 15 shots. However, You're going to go up against that. You still need to be the better goalie. And if Adin Hill becomes the better goalie, it can allow people like Jack Eichel, Thomas Hertl, William Karlsson, and Mark Stone and the rest of a very talented Vegas team to just simply outscore the Oilers. And I think it might be an outscoring series to see what happens between the two West champs from 2023 and 2024. All right, let's go on to our final topic of the night. The President Cup winner of the 2023-24 season were the New York Rangers. Dun, dun, dun. And yeah, that's warranted because in 2024-2025, they did whatever the opposite of that is. No playoffs, and 2 weeks ago came a coaching change. Peter Laviolette out after 2 seasons, Mike Sullivan in as the 38th ever head coach of the Blue Shirts. After parting ways with the Pittsburgh Penguins, Mike got back on his feet quickly. 2 Stanley Cups and 89 games of playoff experience will help that cause. Mr. Strait, thoughts on the new Blue Shirts headband?
Well, when Mike Sullivan became available, the Rangers approached him very aggressively. I mean, he was their guy. I think the only way they were going to make a coaching change was if Mike Sullivan became available. And it just happened to work out that way for the Rangers. But and obviously Sullivan brings quite the resume with him. He had his introduction press conference today, I believe. He's reached out. He spoke to every player individually. And he's acknowledged that he has been brought in for one reason, to win the Stanley Cup. And you think about this team, the 180 from President's Cup trophy winner and going to the conference final to missing the playoffs altogether. You felt like that a coaching change would happen. But when I look at the Rangers in the last few years, this is now it's going to be their 4th head coach in the last 5 seasons. When you think about Joel Gallant, who was here a couple years ago, had the Rangers in the conference finals. He was let go after he was badly outcoached in that first round loss to the New Jersey Devils 2 seasons ago. Peter Laviolette, obviously, we just mentioned him. But also, my mind is completely blank. But you think about the coaching carousel, the rotating door that's going on at 7 Penn Plaza with the Rangers coaching job. I don't know if that's the good thing as far as just simply stability. And I think some of the more successful organizations that you could think about has had some kind of stability. How Mike Sullivan was but the Penguins stability when he joined them in 2015. And it gets to a point. Oh, by the way, David Quinn was the guy I was thinking about. It's been the third coach in that merry-go-round. But at what point does Chris Drury get some of the heat as well? I mean, this is a team. It is the makeup of this roster. The roster overachieved quite a bit last year. I mean, guys played out of their minds. You got Mika Zibanejad. You look at some of these key players. And this year, a total drop off, and you have to question. It's like, okay, was it a 1-year admiration, or is these the play? These are is this who they really are? And that maybe the change needs to be the roster. Maybe that this team needs to get younger in some position. They certainly need to improve defensively. I mean, look. Igor Shesterkin is a great goalie, but he's not Superman. He can't stop everything that gets thrown in his direction. And it doesn't help when the guys in front of him are not playing well defensively as well. Adam Foster's definitely been a major disappointment on that end. When he's not getting beat, he's missing assignments, which happened quite a bit. And the problem with the Rangers right now is that I don't know if it's the coaching that is the problem. I don't know if it's the front office or is it the players, but it just seems like the quick fix or the quick plug-in coach scenario has not worked, because that's a reason why you're on your 4th head coach in the last 5 seasons. And I really think this is a team that really needs to take a step back, because it's like, okay, you've made the coaching change again. You had the young players. You went from young guys to guys who's playoff tested, been to the conference final, has been on the doorsteps of a Stanley Cup final appearance, has won a President's Cup. Where is the problem with this organization if it's not going to be the coach? Is it the players? Maybe this roster does see a major overhaul. Maybe it's the GM. Chris Drury just got an extension. And a lot of people are kind of questioning why would you get this guy the extension? He may be partially the blame for all this. So like I said, I hope Mike Sullivan does well. I hope he's able to bring the same success. By the way, he did coach Team USA in the Four Nations face-off. He'll be coaching Team USA again in the Olympics. And you hope that his resume can translate into wins and obviously get the Rangers back into the postseason. But if that's not going to be the case, you can't keep changing the coaching position every 2 years. And that is a really quick, no coaching job in any sport should have this kind of turnover with this fast capacity. And this isn't like a bottom of the barrel franchise. I mean, this is a team that has literally been on the doorstep of the Stanley Cup final. And it's been clearly good enough to get there and even potentially win a Stanley Cup. But like I said, is it the coaching or is it the players or is it the front office? I don't know if we're going to find out right away what the problem is, let alone if the coaching change is the solution to all of it. And it's going to be really interesting, like next season, how the Rangers start out and where they're going to be towards that Olympic break, where they stand. And because you look at this roster, I feel like this is my personal opinion that there are some changes that need to be made to this player personnel, and I think there will be. But you're gonna have to look at Chris Drury as well. I mean, look, at some point, if you're the chef and you're asked to make filet mignon and you're giving us sauteed steak instead, at some point you might have to swap out the chef and bring in someone else.
So, by the way, this team has made 3 Eastern Conference Finals since that Stanley Cup in appearance in 2014. 3 different coaches in Alain Vigneault, Gerard Gallant, and now Peter Laviolette, and they're all gone. So we'll see if they can get to another one in the near future. Jay, Mike Sullivan does bring a lot of a resume over from Pittsburgh to New York.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the guy that Chris Drury has wanted ever since he took over the Rangers front office. And Sullivan's had an interesting coaching career. His first shot at being a bench boss, he led the Bruins in 03-04 and then again in 05-06 after the lockout, was a hit followed by a miss. He led the Bruins to a 104-point season in 03-04. They finished number 1 in the Northeast, but lost in 7 games to Montreal in the first round. Boston only managed 74 points in 05-06 and missed the playoffs, resulting in Sullivan's dismissal. He spent most of the next 10 years as an NHL assistant, including 4 with the Rangers under John Tortorella from 09 to 13, with 1 year as a head coach in the AHL before taking over as the head coach in Pittsburgh, and the rest, as they say, is history, as he won back-to-back Stanley Cups in his first 2 seasons, leading the likes of Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Phil Kessel, Chris Letang, and Marc-Andre Fleury. That first season, the Pens pretty much came out of nowhere. They were just 15-10 when Sullivan replaced Mike Johnson and wound up only scoring 71 points, but they ran through the playoffs. The next year, they put up 111 points and blew everyone away. Sullivan led them to 2 more 100-point seasons after that, but they didn't get past the second round in 2017-18 and were swept in the first round in 18-19. Sullivan had only 1 more 100-point season with the Pens, 103 in 21-22, which is also the last time he led them to the playoffs. After not getting out of the first round in 4 straight years, they've now gone 3 straight years without even making the postseason. Those last 7 seasons in the Berg don't automatically make me think next year will be 1994 all over again, or even 2023-24 when they made the Eastern Conference Finals. But Drury is pretty much betting his job on Sullivan turning the blue shirts around. Can he do it? Some of his former players seem to think so. Matt Cullen, who is a member of both Penguins Cup winners, thinks his old coach is walking into a similar situation as the mess he inherited in Pittsburgh in 2015-16 when he walked into that locker room with those players I mentioned earlier, all of whom had some pretty big reputations. Cullen said that Sullivan was, quote, super direct, and it didn't matter if you were Sid or a guy on the fourth line, the expectations were super clear. It was something guys really responded to. Cullen called the Rangers situation, quote, a team that's awfully close to being really good, high expectations. It's a perfect scenario for him to come into. I can't think of a better coach in person to come in and lead the ship. Granted, Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, and Adam Fox won't be mistaken for Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, but you can see why Cullen sees the similarities. Cullen called Sullivan a good teacher, that he honed in on details when he took over the Penguins, and the results spoke for themselves, saying, quote, the clearer and more disciplined we got with how we wanted to play, the more it allowed you to play freely. You had guys like Malkin and Sid and Chris Letang that play on instinct so well. All of a sudden, you could see these guys with really unique instincts offensively just start to really flourish. And Brian Boyle, who had Sullivan as his head coach in 21-22 at the Penguins and as an assistant with the Rangers under Tortorella, said, quote, he puts players in positions to succeed. If you have a creative group, he lets you be creative. If you have a physical group, he wants you to bring that, he wants to bring that out of you. He certainly wants everyone to defend no matter what. He wants to play a puck pursuit game no matter what. Boyle also gave Sullivan credit for being really good and being a really good and constant communicator, saying, quote, he will be very forthright on what he expects from everybody. Boyle added that the players need to, quote, look in the mirror a little bit after how the 24-25 season played out and come into camp in good shape. And Boyle ended with this quote, he's going to have a really difficult training camp, as far as I can remember, but for the right reasons and in the right way. He's not just going to skate them into the ground for the sake of it. Now, Sullivan comes in with a reputation as a relationship builder and a coach who holds everyone accountable. Two things that should help with improving the culture and confidence of this roster. Can he fix the once vaunted Rangers power play or improve the lower end of the depth chart at both forward and the blue line? Those may fall more on Drury than Sullivan, at least during the offseason. But the first thing that Sullivan does need to do is get this roster to buy into defending all 200 feet of MSG ice so as to cut down on all those high danger chances the Blue Shirts allowed this season, 676 to be exact, 25th in the NHL. Look, the reclamation project that is the New York Rangers is a big job that in no way can be accomplished by just changing the voice behind the bench, but I guess you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you do. And so you've seen like in a soap opera how a relationship is like one person admits they love the other person, and it's like it took you a long time to find it or it just came out spontaneously. This was not the case for Chris Drury and Mike Sullivan. Drury has wanted Sullivan, as you mentioned, 4 years. In fact, when the job was available and was told that Sullivan was not coming back to the Penguins, people said Drury's job is on the line to get Sullivan into here, and he did. And it's probably going to be, by the way, the highest annual salary ever recorded for an NHL coach. So big time gamble over here. Sullivan has a connection, by the way, to 4 players from the Rangers, by the way, from the Four Nations Faceoff, and Chris Kreider, Adam Fox, Vincent Trocheck, and JT Miller, as recent as February, said in his interview, in his press conference yesterday, they are fierce competitors and have an insatiable appetite to win. But he stressed team, most importantly, in that meeting itself. So Kreider and Sullivan's really, sorry, not Kreider, the general manager and Chris Drury and Sullivan have connections as far back as BU in the 90s. So that's one of the reasons why this marriage was destined to finally being arranged. And we'll see what happens. I think Sullivan does bring a huge reputation. He also basically remade the Penguins into a Stanley Cup contender after them winning in 2009. We talked about Pop at the beginning of the show. We kind of bookend it with another mini dynasty in their sport and what the Penguins had did. By the way, he was, at the time when he was coaching in the Four Nations, he was one of only 2 coaches to spend 10 years with his current team. The other coach was the team that was coaching for Team Canada, in John Cooper of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Going to be very interesting to see what Sullivan does in New York. New York was the first spot also to get filled on the coaching carousel for this year, and we'll see how the luck of the New York does. I mean, the Islanders just got the #1 pick in the draft lottery, even though they lost the All-Star game for some strange reason. So we'll see what happens. But the future does look pretty good with Sullivan in charge. But again, that success needs to be sustained. Peter Laviolette's first year got them to an Eastern Conference final. Their second year, the message wasn't set. Gerard Galland's first year got them to an Eastern Conference final. The second year, they lost in a pretty much choke job against the New Jersey Devils. The message needs to be sent for more than just a quick fix. This needs to stay consistent. But one thing I had said about the Knicks beforehand and a couple of years ago is get 2 consecutive years in a row. And now they've been to the second round 4 out of 5 years. Can the Rangers get to the peak that they should be getting to year after year? Only time will tell.
Mm-hmm.
For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I am the peacemaker, Steven Rabinowitz. Just kidding. Just kidding. Shitstarter would be a much better name, to be completely honest with you. YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines on demand, Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines live, and Jay, Twitter/X/ the thing that Elon Musk ruined is.
That handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I've posted a link to a story by my pal Jason Stark of The Athletic, where he poses the question, is Aaron Judge the greatest right-handed hitter of modern times? We hear it on the sports lines, being in New York, have had a front row seat to Judge's greatness, but when Stark takes notice of the mind-boggling Ruthian level numbers the Yankees captain is putting up, that's saying something. The story makes a hell of a case for the answer to Stark's question being yes, and it's definitely worth your time to check out.
I feel like we could do a whole show on some of the New York baseball shockers that we've seen this year and some stuff. That'll go along with our Joe Mazzulla companion podcast that is coming right after this. So stick around. We'll be back next time on the Sports Lines. No Joe Mazzulla companion podcast. Don't worry about that. We'll see you next time, guys. Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.